of victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Pedicini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Good morning and welcome to a preview edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joining me on a bleak and gloomy day, a Thursday morning, as it were, is my good mate Sixties. Big fella, we are about to rip into the 5-game docket that features rounds 25 across the male competitions and rounds 8 in the ladies, with the Parramatta Eels very much in the hunt for high-seeded spots in the finals in all lower grades, while the NRLW are fighting to stay alive and the NRL still building for next year. So plenty to talk about, but as always, before we do talk football, how you doing, mate?
Yes, look, away from football, not so great if I'm honest, but football's there as the distraction, and there's certainly plenty to talk about, John. And as you said, when we're talking about building for the future, with especially you mentioned it with in relation to the NRL, but the way that the lower grades are performing, especially on the back of such an excellent junior representative season that the Eels enjoyed this year, being in 3 out of the 4 grand finals, taking home both of the female titles in junior representatives, being involved in all 4 final series for the junior representatives, and now seeing the SG Ball graduates coming through and literally filling up,
proliferating the Flegg and New South Wales Cup teams. Yeah.
And to have 3 of them in New South Wales Cup this week, this is just phenomenal, and speaks to how well the junior representative program is starting to function at the club. It is all speaking to the future, and we know there's a lot of work that the NRL team has to do because you just can't suddenly put a whole lot of young players in there. You have to build a team. But it's still a brighter horizon that's there for the club, and that's probably a topic not so much for a match preview podcast, but
good off-season topic though.
It is a good off-season topic, and we're already talking about what our content will be in the off-season and pre-season, because as our listeners know, there is no off-season for the Cumberland Throw. We push through with content 12 months of the year, so stick with us. But John, as usual, a thank you to everyone that's listening. A thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, Greg and the team, the OG sponsors of the Cumberland Throw. And of course, Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels, couldn't partner with a better organisation. And we will be there on Saturday with our pre-match preview in Sturlos. So we look forward to seeing plenty of Eels supporters in there as we prepare for the shock victory over the Roosters.
Barbecue chicken, baby. Yeah, barbecue chicken, baby.
And of course, no matter what platform you are watching this on or listening to it, a like and subscribe goes a long way.
The old algorithm plug. It sucks to have to do it, but that's part of the game, ladies and gents. So we do appreciate if you can give us that like and subscribe. All right, mate, let's talk some football. So we got 5 games on the docket across Saturday and Sunday. Eels in action in both Australia and New Zealand. And one of the teams that will be making the trip across the ditch is the young lads in the Jersey Flegg. They take part of the game on 11:35 a.m. Sunday, and it's out at the FMG Stadium Waikato at Hamilton. And the Eels meet the Warriors. And if we just look at the ladder here, I'm pretty certain the Warriors are doing okay. Warriors, they're 11th, so and they're probably going to be they're out of the hunt for the 6. Sorry, so Warriors, they're not bottom of the table, but they are doing a little bit tough here. 8 wins, 11 losses, and 3 draws. It's always a you look at these draws here. There's the Dragons have 4 draws, Craig. When you have Flegg and Cup obviously not playing Golden Point, geez, you get a fair few locked results at the end of a given game. But yeah, Eels unfortunately not naming a team list thus far, Craig. So I would imagine, and we've spoken about the fact that they can field a second team of players not available in the Flegg right now. That could still be a premiership contending squad. That also speaks to a problem with players available, perhaps. So Eels maybe feeling the pinch this week and not quite sure who they can field. So we'll go over who they had last week and what could be potentially in the wings, I guess. But the team that beat Cronulla handily, 46-16, was Corey Lee at fullback, Larima Rokasuka and Muhammad Al Medina were on the wings. You had Dom Destratus and Dakota Kakoi in the centres. Matty Hunter and Josh Lynn were the halves, but Matt Hunter has been drafted in to the New South Wales Cup this week. So I'm not sure if that's... Dean Hawkins is also available, but he's not really available because Cup are in New Zealand and the NRL are playing in Australia. And I imagine that Dean Hawkins will be with the extended NRL squad. So Hunter and Lynn were the halves. Bo Lucian, Paddy Spence, Ryder Tongi, the starting front row, but Ryder has been promoted to make his debut in the New South Wales Cup. Chris Petrus, Trace Beattie and Max Popo, the starting back rowers. Ralph Destratus, Lachlan Koinakis, Damascus Nemia and Javon Stevenson-Hala were the rotation with Mason Ong, who was great to see him back in the mix, Craig, after getting injured in the first game of the SG Ball season. He was the 18th man. But yeah, the Eels already missing a couple of those players that were featured in the win against the Sharks last week in a roster that has already been stretched thin. So are they really, is that the issue? Are they feeling the pinch with players available right now? Because that seems to be a pretty logical conclusion.
It may it may well be, John, and if there's players with niggles, maybe as well flying to the contest as might add an extra issue.
You always hate to see it logistically because the players are meant to be on top of it, but do some players not have passports or ready? That's sometimes an issue when it comes to New Zealand games.
Yeah. Although you'd probably like to think that if someone was in the squad and there was a game down the track in the schedule, that they'd be on top of that.
You'd like to, but I was a young man once myself. You were a young man once yourself, and maybe we're fractionally more organised than some of the other boys. But I've seen plenty of space cadets and good blokes that don't always get on top of those sort of things. So it wouldn't be a first. But look, Eels going to have a couple of enforced changes there. 5'8" Matty Hunter, who was the captain, and Ryder Talangi look like they're pretty comfortably out. I think the fact that they've been named in Cup, I don't think they'll tinker with that, which means you need to find 2 frontline starters. I think at prop is pretty simple. Damascus comes into the starting team, and then you can promote, whether it's Mason Ong, who's back from injury, and there's a couple other guys that have been in the periphery this year that you could draw upon, assuming that they're not injured. But at 5'8", I think it's a bit tricky. Lorenzo's obviously playing New South Wales Cup. You've lost. I don't know what's up with Cameron Bambut and Cooper Sinclair and Jaden Mbichi, who are your other fullback slash, I suppose quaternary or where you want to go beyond 4 or 5 string options in the halves. But yeah, it's tough sledding in terms of selections right now because they've drawn so deep on their depth, and the fact that they keep winning in spite of that, and not just winning, they've been beating the top seeds in the competition. I don't know what they do from here.
Yeah, you without seeing who's fit and who isn't, and we're assuming that Lincoln Fletcher hasn't been part of the squad.
Yeah, because that would be a pretty straightforward substitute into the halves would be for Lincoln to make his debut.
Yeah. So John, we're a little bit blind in this into what's likely to happen, but if we're going on exposed form, and not just across the season, but especially the last couple of weeks where the Eels have dealt with the top of the table Melbourne Storm and then the second placed Cronulla Sharks, and done so most impressively. The physicality of their win over the Storm and then just unleashing against the Sharks to put on a score as they did, and I really wasn't expecting that against the Sharks. It just they got on a roll and it just kept going. And if anything, the score might have flattered the Sharks in the end. I thought the Eels could have well and truly gone past 50. And anyway, it was just so comprehensive, the victory, considering that it was virtually an entire pack of SG Ball 2025 graduates.
And Paddy Spence, yeah.
With plus Paddy Spence at dummy half. And then you had Lockie Kanikis coming off the bench anyway. So the 2025 pack plus who was on the bench too? I think there was one of the other.
Damascus Nemia. It was Damascus Nemia, Raf, and Javon Stevenson-Haller.
Javon, yeah. So yeah, it was quite a victory.
Paddy Spence deserves a bit of love too, hasn't he? He's held the fort at dummy half of the Parramatta Eels this year. He's done a really solid job.
And then of course he's been one of those dummy halves who can rotate into lock as well.
I mean, you can still throw him into the centres probably, and he'd do a job for you almost Damien Cook-wise, which he's been.
Well, then I wonder whether he's an option in the
halves. 5'8", yeah. Give Lachlan Konakis the start, and then just trying to think, do we have another option at dummy half at this point? Because we haven't seen
Jack Hudson
for a bit, so I assume he's probably nicked up because he was right there in the mix for a long time and had a really strong start to the year. So yeah, options pretty sparse right now, but you could see something like Paddy moving into the starting playmaker position there probably.
Yeah. So and I've got to think this might be we're probably pretty close to Paddy's last year of jersey flag.
I would believe so. He's been in there for a few years now.
Yeah.
Just trying to think. Surely this is his last year of eligibility. And he's one of those players you hope stays in the pathways. Could be a very handy member of the New South Wales Cup, and it's one of those ones where you don't project a straight and rapid progression to NRL for him, but he's a player that could play straight New South Wales Cup for a couple of years and be in the mix down the road.
Yeah, no, he definitely first came into the squad as a 2023 SG Ball graduate, came into the squad late in that season, then played there, of course, last year as a 20-year-old, and then, of course, would be this year as a 21-year-old. So it has to be his last season there. Yeah, but as you said, done exceptionally well. John, jersey flag is probably one of the most unpredictable grades.
I was just looking at the ladder, and the Dragons, who absolutely handled us mid-year when we were in that slump, they're going to miss the finals by a few games. So, yeah. like you said, you don't take this game for granted. You don't say, well, because we're 15 wins, 7 losses, coming equal second on the ladder, we're going to run away with this. It's an away game in New Zealand, so you got to account for the trip, which is always a difficult burden for a young team who aren't necessarily used to the flight and travel, especially now that the jersey flag is much more of a domestic competition than the national youth competition was. So players are much less seasoned in terms of the travel. And the Warriors are, we know that in any given grade, the Warriors can be a very temperamental team. They can turn up and put points on people.
Yeah, and as you said, the Dragons put 60 on us.
60 on us, yeah. It felt like the death knell in our season because that was the real low point on a crash out for our boys as they really struggled just across all phases after being so good for so long. And obviously they turned it around from there. It's fantastic. But yeah, the Dragons absolutely handled Parramatta, but they're not going to feature in the finals. So it's an important lesson there for the boys and for the team about, midfield opposition can be very much as lethal as the top of the table boys.
Yeah, John, I think the identity for this Flegg team was set in stone against the Storm. Just the physicality of that game. That's what will get them close to winning a title this year.
Yeah. Because
we know the flair that's in the team. We know the attacking potential. But that I just keep going back to how physical they were in that game. It really stood out, and I thought this is maybe that ingredient that I've wanted to see on a consistent basis.
Absolutely. And I think we've alluded to it in the wake of the SG Ball Grand Final and talking about some of these guys transitioning into the Jersey Flegg. But there is a very real possibility that it was the loss of the SG Ball Premiership in the final moments there that will potentially make a Jersey Flegg Premiership if it does eventuate. The tough lesson that those boys learned on that day about turning up for the contest and being, physical, like you said, and being confrontational, maybe that's a lesson that they've really taken to heart here, because the young lads of the SG Ball, they're punching so far above their age bracket right now. To come into the under-21s as 18 and 19-year-olds, they've got a number of first-year SG Ball players across that roster here, or like whether they're in this week or have played in past weeks. So, yeah, they're massive, I suppose, display of the talent and potential of these boys that's also been realised.
And, John, I think it was that game which maybe put a tick next to Ryder's name in terms of do we test him in senior football before the end of the season?
That was a
big
Melbourne Storm
back from that early era.
Big Melbourne Storm fact too. There was some large human beings in there, and Ryder did not take a step backwards. Like you said, he literally started the game as badly as you could, dropping the ball and having it scooped up by the opposition winger for a score. And he did not. That can mentally break someone, not just in the context of a game, but for a season. If you have a bad response to it, and Ryder said, "Well, stuff that. I'm going to pick up where I put down and then add on," and that's what he did. He was huge in that game.
Yep. So I think we're both going to tip the win here,
but it could be closer than we anticipate. I think the Warriors might be a bit of a sticky opposition here. Yeah,
and also bearing in mind we have no idea what team is going to be named, so it's a little bit tipping a little bit blind, but you've got to go on exposed form, and that's what we'll do there. So, John, this now takes us to the Harvey Norman match.
They were off to Woy Woy. That was the initial scheduling here, but they've been since moved to Eric Tweedale Stadium, which is obviously fantastic for any fan of the Blue and Gold that wants to attend. And if you do want to attend, this is a 12 o'clock p.m. kickoff on Sunday. And this is the, if I just bring up the ladder here, the Eels were in fourth coming into this round, if I believe. Yeah. Fourth place Eels take on the 8th place Central Coast Roosters. Parramatta, 5 straight wins after their consecutive losses to start the season, although they were losses against the Sharks and Steelers 2 and 3 on the ladder respectively. They have beaten the Knights, who are top of the table. It was the Knights' only loss, by the way. But the Central Coast Roosters, 4 wins, 5 losses. No, 2 wins, 5 losses. I can't count. The 4 points, the 4 is the 4 points from the 2 wins. 2 wins, 5 losses, negative 44 and against. Parramatta up there, plus 38. So almost diametrically opposed teams here. For 5 wins for Parramatta, 5 losses for the Roosters, plus 38, minus 40. So maybe looking in a mirrored opposition here, which is kind of fascinating. But the Eels look like this in this game with Ella Carlisle at fullback. Alicia Bell, who played last week, was a late inclusion, now officially back in the team. Caitlin Pearden, the opposite winger. Tamira Liardi and Kiana Takarangi, the centres. Matisse Bettridge and Elias Sufan, the halves pairing, that's done a really good job this year. In the front row, we've lost Taylor Falanico, 60s. I think that was a shoulder injury or a hip injury, as I mentioned on the news podcast. She scored a try against the Bunnies and got up very ginger. And it looks like it's ruled her out for a week. She's been replaced by Liana Dimmick. Ruby Jenkins at Ellis, the other starting bookend. Chelsea Makira is the dummy half, and she's been a mainstay at that position for the Eels for the last, 18 months now. Been a rock for the Eels in the HNWP. Back row sees Josie Lenaz and Jess Kennedy, who was the captain on the edges. Kylia Gray, who had an absolute whale of a game, has been promoted to the starting lock forward role. She tore South Sydney to pieces, and hopefully she can do the same against the Roosters. Then on the interchange, we see Rory Mueller come to the team at dummy half utility position. Amani Lee Avae, Alana O'Loughlin, and Fontaine Tavua round out an all Tasha Gale, all pathways interchange there. Got Ashley Pottinger and Ava Jones as the extended players.
Yeah, John, you look at this and you see something like 13 of the 19 players named have come through the Eels Tasha Gale team in the last couple of years. And you know then that this is the pathways in action, seeing this. And I also think it probably speaks to the way that they've come together as a team after the trial that I witnessed against the Bulldogs was not great, and in fact, it probably looked like a Harvey Norman team against an NRLW team. That seemed to be the disparity in. Oh, it was in many aspects of the play. It was cohesion, it was aggression, and I guess as well just confidence. But they're building; they are really building, and you can see that there's so many players that know each other's games quite well, and then you've got that sprinkling of something else that has been recruited in there. Obviously, Ella Carlisle has been she's a player to watch. She's just a player to watch because she's an X factor in this team. She's one of those players who can create something out of nothing. Then you've got a really experienced campaigner in Takarangi, and you know that she's going to bring that physicality and aggression out wide, which always stands in good stead. It puts pressure on the outside backs from other teams, especially with the kick chase, that sort of thing. And that seems to be something that she's brought to the team. But outside of that, John, just the promise of some of these players that are there that will be part of the NRLW in future years. And they're just combining so well at the moment. So you have to back them to continue on this roll. It's 5 on a trot. Good chance to go 6 in a row, should go 6 in a row, and start to really take them to where it might be. You don't want to. No, I'm not going to jinx them with what I say about where they will finish up.
But the prospects are exciting.
Yeah,
and getting to the finals would be a massive milestone for this young team and the experience that comes with it, win or lose. Once you get to sudden death football, but they're certainly acquitting themselves fantastically well, and really proud of their efforts, mate. It's a young, inexperienced team that have done so many things right, so many little things they're doing right, and that's how you get to be, better and better. So really encouraging signs.
And a shout out to Alicia Bell, who's come into the team in the last couple of weeks, and it's just great to see her pushing forward. She had a good season as an assistant coach in the junior representative squads. Some tough personal circumstances with the passing of her father recently, and she's an exceptional goal kicker, and that can mean quite a lot to teams in the women's game, to have someone that is capable of slotting the goals from the sideline. Those 2 points could be the difference between winning and losing an important game.
No doubt.
So, John, I think we're both tipping a win there, which now takes us to the New South Wales Cup.
Yeah, this is a spicy one. Top of the table Warriors, who've secured the minor premiership, up against the second place Parramatta Eels. Eels obviously killing it in all their pathways, top 3, top 4, top 2 across the Flegg, HNWP and Cup. But they met the Warriors a few weeks back, and it was actually a pretty tight and torrid affair until the final 15, 16 minutes, where I think we saw, oh my goodness, I was trying to think of the Manly boy, the little nugget that was on the wing for us, Craig. Let me go find this game. He got suspended got sent and then later suspended for a high shot on Tane Tuapiki. It was, where is this game here? So 46-22 was a score, and it was Alfred Smalley that came in, jammed in off the wing and got Tuapiki high and ended up getting sent off. That was at the end of the game, though. That wasn't why we lost. But Eels look like this, mate. At fullback, enjoying a really good year in the New South Wales Cup. It's Arpa Twiddle. He's got Jake Tungor and Hayes Dunster as his wing options, with the young centre pairing of Araz Namba and Richie Penasini. In the halves, another young gun, Lorenzo Tawatina, making that big step up to senior football and doing a really good job. He'll partner another young gun, and Matty Hunter, who was unfortunately off to the Newcastle Knights, but enjoying a very fruitful year for him. He's been a real breakout player for the Eels and will be a great pickup for Newcastle. Woody Gregg is one of the more experienced players in this team. He starts in the front row, working alongside Brock Parker with Manny Luke, the dummy half option. Obviously, Joey Lussick, I think, being drafted into not necessarily NRL consideration, but because these boys are going over to New Zealand, I think Riles wants the security of a few other NRL options available. Speaking of which, no Tony Mattielli, who was likewise in a similar position, being included in the NRL team list but not present here. It's a very young centre edge pairing of Tyrese Lakini and Josiah Funarayuta. Tyrese being another young mainstay of this New South Wales Cup team, but Josiah, who scored a try last week, making his Cup start debut, I suppose, or first Cup start. Dan Keir, another seasoned player, he'll captain the team from lock forward. Then on the interchange, we've got Zach Hunter caught up from the Sydney Shield. He's actually done a job for the Eels in the New South Wales Cup earlier this year, I think against the Bulldogs, Craig. I think he had a pretty handy game. And then you have three young players, Will Lewis, Rada Talangi, and Yeti Samuelu. We saw Yeti last week. I don't think he got many minutes, but he'll feature more prominently this week, I'm sure. Ryder making his debut as a first-year SG Ball eligible player, and Will Lewis, another one. We keep saying a breakout player enjoying a fruitful year because it's true. Will Lewis, who I think was rubbed out earlier on in the year, Craig, with some injury, came into the Flegg team. Traditionally a back rower, has played in the centres and has done a great job this year in both capacities. He's been really good in the Jersey Flegg and a deserved call-up here this week as the depth of the New South Wales Cup is tested. 18th man is Samuel Luizu, and they take on, like I said, the first place New Zealand Warriors. Plenty of good players here. The lock forward and captain, Kalani Going, is a good prospect, but Bunty Afoa, Freddie Lussick, Tom Arley, some NRL experience right there. You got Edward Cozzy, Moala Graham Taufa, Morgan Harper, so more NRL experience there. Jet Cleary, obviously the younger brother of Nathan, doing some pretty good things over there for the Warriors. And they're runaway minor premiers. They've been very, very good this year, only dropped a couple of games. But the Eels did challenge them when they were in the midst of a real injury crisis. The Eels, that is, not the Warriors. So it'll be interesting to see how they can handle themselves on the road trip now.
So we've had both Ali and Morgan Harper who've spent time at the Eels.
Yeah.
in the Warriors team now.
Tom Arley was a loan during the COVID bracket, I believe.
Yes. So, John, we look at this Eels team and the players that have spent time in Jersey Flegg this year. So just run through, you may correct me on these if I'm wrong with any of them or skip anyone. Arpa.
Yep.
Araz.
Yep.
Richie.
Yeah, only a couple of games, but he was there. Yep.
Yeah. No, just any game. Could be one game. Lorenzo.
Correct.
Matty Hunter.
Correct.
Tyrese.
Yep.
Josiah.
Yep.
Will Lewis, Ryder Talangi, Yeti Samuelu.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's an indication of, I guess, the changing of the guard that's happened at the Eels this season. We spoke before about the players. Well, this is on the news podcast. We spoke about the players that have been moved on, the players that are out with injury at the moment. Probably if we looked at who was available at the start of the season and compare it to now, just imagining you had a fully fit roster at the start of the season as well, and there's probably about 13, 14 players that are no longer available for this New South Wales Cup team or the first grade team. And yeah, you just look at the players that have made their way into the senior ranks, and then you realise, well, they've actually got themselves into second place on the ladder despite all this turnover. And it's part of why we feel buoyant about the future prospects of the Eels. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that being a good performer at New South Wales Cup will translate into.
No, it's not. It's not indicative of guaranteed NRL success, but it does point to a trend or an idea of potential success.
Yes, it's part of the journey that the players will have to first grade, and some of the players that will. What I like to look for, John, is players who actually look better the higher up that they go.
Yeah, they can elevate their game. The more narrow the funnel of talent becomes.
Yes. So, John, I really liked how competitive the Eels were when they played the Warriors the last time.
We talked about wanting to be physical and confrontational. That's exactly who they were against the Warriors, and they let themselves down a few errors here and there. But again, I go back and look at that roster, Craig, and the Eels were, and they're not full strength this week, but back then they were also very much not full strength, and they were very competitive.
So have you got the team list that was there for when they last played the Warriors?
They took on a Warriors team that Warriors team was stronger too. Tane Tuapiki, Tanner Boyd was playing. Who else was there? They had Eddie Arima Tovea on the edge, who I believe is playing first grade as well. So they had a few more players there. But the Eels had Harper at fullback, but Samuel Louise was on the wing. Alfred Smalley was in the centres. Bo Newlands and Liam Scolari were the backline. Like that was very much Ron Massey Cup being pulled in there. You got Brendan Hands playing halfback that week. Obviously, Brendan no longer with the Eels on loan with Toulouse. Is that who is that? He says,
I think that is. Yeah.
But he's a dummy half primarily, so that was another big one. We had Kane Kalache, who's unfortunately looked like he's been rubbed out for the year, playing prop there. Saxon Pryke was at lock forward, so the pack was pretty solid still. Parker, Kalache, Kiert, Lakini, Pryke, Max Tupou, Nemia, Lewis, and Luke on the bench. So there were some similarities. But the back line was much weaker. The halves were much weaker. Matty Hunter is a much more competence not the right word, because Brendan Hands has always done a job for us in that role, but obviously more natural and perhaps cohesive option at halfback. And the Warriors were stronger, albeit playing in Australia, and the Eels that back line's a lot weaker. I mean, Newlands and Scolari, guys that came in and did jobs for us, but they are Ron Massey talents as opposed to ascending Jersey Flegg talents.
Yeah, so that's with respect to those players.
Oh, it's not trying to be derogatory. It's just
No. I mean, you talk about a player comes out of Ron Massey Cup, and that's the standard that they're used to playing against. So even if they've got potential themselves to do a bit more, because we have seen players that have gone from Ron Massey Cup to first grade. In fact, I think trying to think who was the Eels winger who spent quite a lot of time in Ron Massey Cup. I'm going back nearly 10 years.
Oh, I was going to say, what's 10 years? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, one of the Pacifica wingers that we had that his journey was like he was in Pathways and then
Etuaseli?
No, I don't think it was. Anyway, well,
let me poke around so I can find for you, because that would have been Wenty back then.
Yes.
Who could it have been?
But rather than
Beretta Framo,
no. I'll have a bit of a dig, because I know how I will find this, John. But what you're talking about is coming out of a certain standard that you're used to playing, and all of a sudden you're having to rise to another standard. And those sorts of players, there was a lot to ask for them, especially as a group, because it was literally a group of players. So, John, I'm expecting that the Eels will win will do well to win this game. Because
the importance of clarifying a statement
there. yeah, we'll do well to win this game. I'm not ruling out our chances. We have to be honest and say it's a big ask to beat the runaway minor premiers away in another country.
Yeah,
and with still more players missing because of the circumstance of maybe players being left at home for the NRL duties.
Yeah, as it stands, they're going to be without, even though they're available in terms of health, Dean Hawkins, Tony Mattelli, and Joey Lussick. And you need to have an 18th man in the NRL. And I imagine, look, I think it's been pretty clear that Jason Riles prefers to have a healthy and fresh 18th man. That seems to be something that's been a trend this year. Well, I'm not against it, but it does mean that you are a man short in the cup in a given week. But in this particular week, because it's a clash across the ditch versus a domestic clash of the Parramatta Eels, a home game, where they're going to be an extra couple players short, which is really rough when you're already short-handed.
John, it was longer than 10 years ago. Kenny Seo,
there you go.
Now, I'm sure that he's spent a significant period of time, or at least a season or so, in Ron Massey Cup in his journey to play first grade, because I think he came in a similar path to Mulatalo last year, starting the season in Ron Massey Cup and then going into New South Wales Cup and then ending up with an NRL debut. But of course, Kenny Seo ended up with a bit of a longer NRL career. So he actually made a success of that transition. John, have you got any different thoughts to mine?
Yeah, you got to pay due deference to the Warriors, who have been the form team of the competition. They got the home field advantage. That again, like you sort of alluded to, it's not to say the Eels can't be competitive and can't find a way to jag a win here. And ultimately, you look at the Warriors and you know they're a team you're going to have to go through most likely at some point in that run to a grand final or a premiership, depending on where you fall in the draw and how the Eels seeding shakes out in the coming weeks that are left. But yeah, I would hope at a very minimum that they're very competitive, even considering the players that aren't available. I think there is still a lot of talent in this team. We talk about all those young players. This is a huge flashpoint in their season as a chance to step up and look to try and dominate the best team in the competition. And that's what you want to see from the young lads here. And it's a young halves pairing. It's going to be difficult. Lorenzo and Matty Hunter, though, are very talented, and they bring something a little bit different to the table each, although both are very good runners of the ball, which is always a great starting point as a playmaker. Really keen to see what someone like Josiah can do as his maiden start in the grade. I hope that Ryder gets some good minutes. Hope that Yeti gets some good minutes here, to a chance for them to flex their muscles and potential up against a very, very good opposition. And again, you don't want to try and preempt a loss, but again, you're paying deference to the best team in the competition right now, and I think that they're going to be tough to beat over in their home trappings.
Yeah. So I'm not going to be surprised by an Eels win, but on the balance of probability, the Warriors get the win. But it's one of these heart and head sort of ones for me. So the heart says the Eels. The head says the Eels are a chance, but logically the Warriors have just had a great season. So we now get to the NRLW, and this is a really tough one to preview, John.
Yeah, look, we were circumspect last week when the Eels were facing the Brisbane Broncos on the road up at Suncorp, or Lang Park as it was back in the day, and we knew that was a tough assignment. And unfortunately, as we said in the Team List or Tuesday night live show, it's a case of out of the frying pan and into the raging oil fire, because you go from the Broncos, who were the second best team in the competition therein at that point, to the runaway leaders of the ladder, the Sydney Roosters, who I look at the rosters. The Eels have built a good roster, Craig, and I know there are issues that go beyond the roster right now. I think they're just down on form. I think that's just, unfortunately, 10-week season, you have a form slump. It's going to be brutally costly, and that's where the Eels are at right now. I look at the Roosters and I look at the Broncos, and the rumors of the Broncos maybe picking up Southwell from Newcastle and whatnot. We have, unfortunately, as with the NRL, super rosters already been formed, and the haves and have-nots in this code, because the Roosters, Bridie Parker, Taina Navidi, Jess Surgis, Isabel Kelly, their captain, Jamie Fressard on the wing, Jocelyn Kelleher, Taryn Aiken in the centres in the halves, Atese Pule, Keely Davis, Rima Butler, Aaliyah Nasio, Jasmine Strange, Olivia Koenig, the starting forward pack, Mia Wood, Macy Carlisle, who I wonder is a relative of Ella while we're here, with Amber Hall, Eliza Lapamau, alongside we got Herdegan, Hay, Baxter, Burton, and Fletcher. Corbin Baxter's not even making that team right now. And the Eels, for their turn, Craig, they look like this. Abby Church at fullback, Zoe Fay, Martha Mattelli on the wings. Mia Middleton makes her club debut in the centres. Lindsay Tui, the other centre there. Then you've got Fleur Ginn moving into the halves this week, the partner, Rachel Pearson, Elsie Albert, Ruben Cherrington, Brianna Eels starting front row for the Eels. Boss Kapua, the captain, Mahalia Murphy on the edges. Kendi Cherrington at lock forward. Tanika Todd, Hunter Page, Travis, Tess McWilliams, Chloe Jackson on the interchange. Extended roster, Riverly Arlaw, Kiana Takarangi, Ruby Jean Canada-Ellis, Yasmin Baker, and Chelsea McKeris. Obviously a lot of the HNWP talent we saw there, plus Riverly, who looks like she's been rested/rotated this week. I don't know if she's done anything particularly bad to warrant being dropped. I think just a case of a young player in a long season, just managing her a bit there. But, yeah, you look at the Brisbane roster, you look at the East roster, and the amount of stars they have is, I don't know, I don't think it's reflective of potentially competitive balancing.
Yeah, John, it's a near representative backline.
Exactly.
That they've got there. And
I mean, and they've got, Olivia Koenig, Keely Davis, who are both very, very good forwards. Tessa Poy is a good player as well. And then Rima Butler had to stay at the Parramatta Eels, but she's also bounced around the league. So it's not to say they haven't, I don't mean bounce around the league in a negative way. She's just, the NRLW has been very aggressive with player rotations. So it's not like they haven't got, their solid players and their filler players, but they've got how many Origin players? How many Australian reps?
Yeah, they've got superstars in their team. That's basically you've got players in that Roosters team that you would classify as being marquee.
Yeah, for the code, exactly.
For the code, and they've got multiple players that fit that bill, and you have to think to yourself, well, how is it that you can assemble a super roster like that?
From 3 through to 7, it's just superstar for superstar. Surges, Kelly, Fressard, Kelleher, Aiken. And I mentioned Davis and Koenig. Like they're not even playing Corbin Baxter, who is was considered a star player in the code for a long time.
Yeah, it's a frightening ask for the Eels. There was a period of time with the Roosters in the last couple of years where you didn't necessarily know what you were going to get from them. They could fluctuate a little bit in form despite the fact they had a superstar roster. But not anymore. They just come out and flex the muscle of having such a roster.
Undefeated heading into the 8th round of the game of the tournament. So 7 wins, 0 losses. Have they been even challenged? I don't know. I was trying to pull up their draw here because they've been the best team by some margin. They smashed the Warriors, eased past the Dragons, had a tight game against the Broncos. So there you go, contender versus contender right there. Crushed the Bulldogs, crushed the Tigers, crushed the Titans, easily past the Knights, and now they have the Eels. So the only time they've been challenged this year was against the Broncos, who are quite comfortably the number 2 seed and the 2 presumptive grand finalists as it stands right now. And we know that any given Sunday, as the Americans like to say, for American football, but translated to any given game here in Australia, that these teams can be beaten in a postseason setting. But God, I can't see anything but a Broncos Roosters grand final right now.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the where the Eels can compete, but we've lost a couple of Eels players who are theoretically X factors for us.
Yeah, they're the ones that can stand against the Jess Surges and Isabella Kellys in terms of maybe not outright talent, but projected growth with Rory Owen and Cassie Toa Hiku. They are huge ass at Parramatta. They were our game breakers, our players that could shake up structure and spark something. And unfortunately, just shit luck for our girls this year. They've been bogged down by injuries across both those players and the forwards. And on top of that, they've been their own worst enemies at times too, with how sort of self-disruptive they've been with their play. The errors, the lack of line speed, lack of tempo, the confliction between wanting to play tough through the middle and being able to attack the edges of speed. They haven't found that balance, as we've spoken about, Craig. And if they had all those things working, if they had all their players available, I would go into this game saying maybe you can upset the Roosters, because that's how good the Roosters have been this year. They've been the benchmark, they've been the best, and our girls would need to be at their best to be within the same postcode coming into this week. And maybe they can use that as bulletin board material, not necessarily just our thoughts, because we're just a shitty little podcast, but that overarching theme or energy coming into this week, maybe they can use that and harness it and say, we're going to spring the mother of all upsets, but that's what it's going to take, because they're down in form. They're up against a runaway premiership favourite, and it is the biblical David versus Goliath, but I don't know if our girls got a sling and a stone handy right now to spring the upset.
John, I think for a start, we need this weather to continue. And because if I look at the two lineups, the Eels match up better through the forwards than and that's again with respect to our back line, but I think we match up better through the forwards than we do to the backs, because, as you said, the superstar back line that the Roosters have got just speaks to itself. We need to find a way where they can be slowed up and be a little bit, they can find it a little bit more difficult to assert their advantage, and a heavy track, I think, will help to that end. But we cannot afford to be passive in the defence line, which we were last week. We need to be super aggressive through the forwards. We need to, all the forwards need to take a leaf out of Kennedy Cherrington's book, which is just get in the face of their opponents, try and put them off their game. We know that's what Kennedy will do once she goes out on the field, because she's a take no prisoners type of player. As soon as she crosses that stripe out onto the field,
Flicks the switch.
It flicks the switch, and she's not going to take a backward step. And we're just starting to see some of that from Ruben as well. Yeah, all the forwards are really going to need to be hyper aggressive.
And look, it is very common sense 4101 stuff, but you got to cut down the errors. You got to have the line speed. You got to ask the questions that need to be asked of the Roosters. If you're passive, if you beat yourself, they're going to put 40, 50 on you. And you need to be disruptive. You need to be confrontational. You need to get them off their game. You need to disrupt their tempo, because they, as we saw with the Broncos last week, you let them get into gear and they'll just run away for game. And it's the same thing for the Roosters.
Yeah.
So, like you said, they need to really harness the energy that Kennedy brings. Need to see a few more players embrace that sort of, not chaotic element, but just aggression. Get in there. Crack a few skulls. Obviously not literally, but metaphorically, crack a few skulls, shake up the game a bit. And if they can do that, yeah, there is a reason to think they can be in the running for an upset victory. But as we've mentioned in recent weeks, you need more from your halfback, Rachel Pearson. She is the senior figure when it comes to the spine right now. Abby Church too, who I think has really tried to pick up the slack in the last couple of games. But there's only, how much more can Abby do? She's absolutely busting her backside. At least I feel like she's busting her backside. Maybe you don't see it the same way. I feel like she's really tried to put the team on her back, but unfortunately we keep making too many errors. We keep being too passive with our line speed.
And I think in attack, we're just not putting Abby into a position where she
we really
utilise her evasiveness.
Yeah, I think from last year to this year, I don't know why, but it feels like we're not using the same structures that were so good for Cassie Toihiku, who was obviously not present, and Abby Church, which allowed them to really stand out and be such impact players for the Parramatta Eels.
Yeah. So, John, again, this is another head and heart one. So the heart says, if the Eels do this, this, and this, as we just talked about, we can get a competitive game. If they play similarly to how they performed against the Broncos, then we get a similar scoreline against the Broncos.
Yeah.
I will still go. Look, I'm going to have to give an honest tip what I think the scoreline is likely to be, given that it's wet. That it continues to be wet. I will suggest that it ends up with a 24-6 scoreline to the Broncos.
Oh,
and
I was going to say just some breaking news for the NRLW, which is really nice for us, given that usually when we record it's the opposite. But the club has just dropped an announcement saying that the Eels have extended and upgraded Fontaine Tafua, who is another fantastic young prospect who we speak about really highly all the time on the podcast. She's been upgraded to an NRLW development squad for the remainder of this season and has signed a top 24 contract through to the end of the 2028 season. So that's a long-term extension here to keep her in blue and gold. Very talented young back rower who's been in the HNWP plying her trade post Tarsha Gale success. And of course, she had that memorable try in the Tarsha Gale Grand Final. So maybe we see her sooner than we expect then. Bumped up to a development contract with the injuries they have in the squad, might open the door for her to make a debut at some point this year.
Yes. John, just one thing that I wanted to note as well is that River Lee wasn't named in the Harvey Norman.
No, so is this a case of another genuine 18th player, a concussion substitute, which it seems to be the trend for the Parramatta Eels this year? Is she a potential late inclusion? Who knows?
Yeah. So, yes, and then just getting back to the rounding off the tips, I will nominate Kenny Charrington to be both first try scorer and best on field.
Yeah, unfortunately, my head and my heart are in alignment this week, Craig, and it's not a good thing for the blue and gold. I think the Roosters are just too good, and I think the Eels are in too much of a slump right now. And if they get within touching distance of the Roosters, I will hail that as a great result, honestly, given how off the pace they are right now, they being, of course, Parramatta, and just how untouchable the Roosters are. So if they can cobble together a really competitive and fiery effort, I'll be very proud of them. And obviously, if they get the win, I will be beyond proud of them. That would be one of their biggest wins in franchise history. But this, you can't even use this as a get right game, but you need to use this as like get better game. Find a way to be competitive, be direct and confrontational, cut down on the errors, find a bit of aggression in defense, a bit of line speed in defense, find a balance in your attacking structures. Because like I said, there's been a bit of oil and water with how they've been handling, trying to hammer through the middle and getting the ball out to the edges, and they haven't been able to find a balance of, punch it up 2 or 3 times and then shift the ball, or vice versa, look for early shifts and then set up a play back through the ruck. It's been a rough year for them schematically, and even with their just emphasis on little things. So get that as right as you can against the Roosters, and I'll be impressed.
You got a tip for Eels first try scorer and best?
First try scorer, hoping that we do get on the board. We did against Brisbane last week. Let's go off the centre turn 5'8" Flegg in.
Okay, and who will be the leading light for the Eels?
Abby Church. I just think she's put her hand up in the last couple of weeks as the dark has gotten darkest for the Parramatta Eels. Abby's really tried to be the leading light, and I'm hoping that she can again sort of pull the Eels forwards and be competitive in this game.
Okay, now this leads us to the NRL clash between the Eels and Easts.
Yeah,
Sydney
Easts. Well, let's keep calling them East, because Sydney Roosters is a bit of a wank, isn't it? Like I know they're saying Sydney City, but they don't say Sydney City, and you don't represent all of Sydney, so you're the Eastern Suburbs Roosters. And look, tongue in cheek there, because the Roosters obviously a very storied franchise. Enter this round in 8th position to Parramatta's 14th, playing some phenomenal football. They're going to be a real challenge for Parramatta this week. Captain and fullback James Tedesco leads the way for them, with Junior Tupou replacing Daniel this week. So a Tupou for a Tupou, with Mark Nwanga-Nitawaze on the other wing. Billy Smith and Robert Toyer round out what is still a very, very good back line. Hugo Savala with the boot. He'll partner Sam Walker at halfback and 5'8" and halfback respectively. Then you've got breakout player of the year potentially in Nafau White, who's been awesome for the Tricolours and signed a long-term extension for them. We spoke about him with AJ when he came on the podcast earlier this year. And we at that point, we sort of maybe the three of us were ahead of the curve because we given him some props before he'd really been broken out as a certified almost rising superstar. But
I think AJ was, really talked up Nafahu, and it was. But I think you and I were both on board with that as well because we saw what he brought to the team.
Yeah. He just the physicality, the energy, the ability to push through contact. And we saw that last week with that try he scored for the Bulldogs where he just shunted back 3 or 4 defenders on the goal line. He's working with another outstanding bookend, Lindsay Collins, Connor Watson, the starting dummy half, Crichton of the Angus variety with Sua Wong on the edges, Victor Radley, their lock forward, so a good pack as well. Then on the interchange, the weakest unit, but still pretty good. They've got Benaiah Yelu, who I believe is the utility dummy half, Celeste Fiketti, who's a big unit there, Egan Butcher and Spencer Lenu, the Red Mist Bull himself, rounding out their interchange with King, Steep, Lasalu, Smith, and Rodwell, Tom Rodwell it is, not Toby, their extended roster. For the Eels, though, and they've got a couple of changes this week, Craig, because obviously we did lose Luca Moretti, and that's been a story of a season, isn't it? It's like every time we think we've gotten back to some degree of being close to full strength, the injury gods come and kick us in the nads. So we have Isaiah Yongi back at fullback. I know he was named at 5'8" ahead of kickoff last week, but he played fullback, obviously. Zach Lomax and Josh Adokar on the wings. Will Penasini and Dylan Brown in the centres. Joash Papali working with Mitchell Moses, who was the captain in the halves. Jermaine Hopgood, Riley Smith, and Junior Barlow starting front row. Kelma Tuolangi on the right edge. Jack Williams on the left. Dylan Walker at lock forward. Game 250 for Dylan too. Big milestone there. Talon the Silva, Charlie Guyman, Matt Dury, Jordan Samrani, the rotation players. Hawkins, Dunster, Keir, Matteelli, and Lussick, the extra options there for the Eels, as we sort of alluded to in the New South Wales Cup preview. So Jason Riles with some extra options this week, given that players have not been named in Cup but are there present on the extended bench. So we lose Luca Moretti. We promote Jordan Samrani, to the bench. Dylan Walker starting at lock forward this week. Look, Luca's a big loss. Our pack has really taken a hit, Craig, in recent weeks. Obviously, we lost Kitione Katonga going back against that game against Penrith. But then we lost Sam Tuovaiti, who has been a huge presence off the interchange. Now Luca's gone, and suddenly we're losing a lot of muscle. Like we've still got good players in the pack, but the big meaty boys, the guys that can win the collisions for you, they're starting to disappear from Parramatta's pack right now.
Yeah, and I know that it's a game that's gone increasingly towards speed and mobility in the forwards, but you still like to have a bit of size, don't you? And we're starting to show that we're lacking in the middles right now. And that's understandable because we've not just got injuries, but we've let middles go.
Joe Ofundahi, Ryan Madison immediately come to mind in that regard. Sean Lane, who was sort of that hybrid edge middle option too, obviously transitioning to an off-field playing role this year. That's a lot of cap experience, just playing options gone right there. And the guys that stepped into that void did a tremendous job. I mean, Sam Tuovaiti, as a rookie, was punching so far above what we expected. And people who have been following TCT know how big a rap we have on Sam Tuovaiti. This isn't a surprise that he's a good footballer for us. What is a surprise is that he was being as consistently physical week to week as we saw, given the demands of playing through the middle in the NRL. Luca, as you sort of badged him to be a breakout player this year, and when he's been healthy, we've seen it. That's been the frustration for both us, but I imagine, again, we always whinge about it. Well, I say whinge, talk about it as a fan. Imagine how elevated and how amplified the frustrations would be for Luca, Craig, who has been...
Oh, it's been a horror year for him.
Yeah, when he's been available, he's been so good. But he has not been available because of just one niggling injury, another niggling injury. It's not like he's breaking down the soft tissue stuff consistently. It's just being banged up here and there. So incredibly frustrating. And then obviously Kitione, who was taken out by foul play beyond his own powers, then that is just a damn misfortune. The Eels are short on troops, mate. There is no way to spin this positively. They are short on troops. And Jordan Samrani's been drafted into the team. He'll get his minutes. He'll do a good job. Jordan's been really good this year. Good development prospect, good engine, good physicality, versatility across, playing centres in the edge. But the Eels are skinny in the middle. And we've talked about it on Tuesday. Jack Williams is likely as any player to kick back into the middle this week. Maybe they promote Charlie Guyman, or presumably they promote Charlie Guyman as starting edge in that scenario. But we are, how do you compete against the Roosters pack for what we're fielding right now? The boys will give it a red hot crack, no doubt, but we are so far deep on the charts right now.
Well, there literally is. Let's look at the pack. Jermaine Hopgood, a lock middle, and he's starting at prop. We got Junior, who's the only recognised prop middle.
He's the only recognised prop in the team. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That, like, literally, when you look at Kelmer's a back rower, Jack Williams is ideally a back rower and has filled in at middle, but is relatively lightweight as a middle. Dylan Walker, of course, is that hybrid lock playmaker type of role. Charlie Guymer could play lock middle, but he's mainly been a back rower. Matt Dury has predominantly been a back row player. And Jordan Samrani, back row / centre. So, yeah. Now, that probably makes it even tougher in the conditions if we have that track.
It's maybe it's not going to be pissing rain on Saturday, but I'm looking out the window and seeing miserable weather, and it was pouring last night. It's going to be a wet track in some capacity, and even if it does dry out Friday and Saturday, I think it's still going to be wet because of the amount of rain that we've had. It obviously favours a strong pack, doesn't it? And there's been times this year where you could say that the wet matchup has favoured the Parramatta Eels. This week is not one of them. That Roosters pack, I think, are going to feast on what we prospect we can field right now, and it's really scary to look at it on a paper matchup and say you need every player playing out their skins if we're going to be competitive.
Yeah, you know what? I think I would have been a little bit more buoyant had we dealt with the Rabbitohs as we should have last week.
Oh, that changes the narrative coming to this game massively because, if you get beaten by the Roosters, it's understandable. But you would have had 3 straight wins after the hypothetical Rabbitohs win? Or was it 2? I can't remember. Maybe it was 3 from 4 games. And, you would have been obviously clear off the bottom of the table. You had you'd banked a win you should have had, and sort of looking at this game as just a real puncher's chance game, isn't it? Like, you go into the game knowing the Roosters are on fire, competing for the top 8, and say, okay, we'll take what we can get. Instead, you come into this game, energy's a bit lower, you're frustrated because we did not take advantage of the opportunities we created ourselves, and it's been amplified again by an injury to another key player in Luca Moretti. And you are a bit frustrated, and like you said, it does change the complexion of this discussion.
Yeah, and John, Shelley wrote a post this week saying that to her that match demonstrated that the Eels have not developed a killer instinct, and that's and you could argue, well, look, if you're sitting down the bottom of the table, how do you have that killer instinct? Well, if you're beating the teams that you should be beating and going on with it, rather than taking shortcuts, then you've got that killer instinct. And last week, without question for me, the Eels took some shortcuts. I think the players described it themselves as trying to play too pretty, rather than doing the basics of football. Like they strayed away from that, and I think sometimes that can happen if you're making line breaks, and it feels like you've got that capacity to make line breaks, and then you're not finishing them off. Well, they weren't finishing them off because they weren't. They did have a player in the opposition who was doing a remarkable job at fullback in Gray, but they also just didn't have the support play that was needed when some of those breaks were made. Then they didn't have the composure after the breaks.
Look,
I'd also argue they didn't have match officiating support.
No doubt. And I've been the furthest thing from being ultra negative coming out of that game. I know there's been a lot of frustration. People badged it our worst game of the season. I don't think that's unfair, but in many ways, from a pundit that's been more positive than negative coming out of that game, not been positive in general, but more positive than negative. I will say that game was a stark reminder that the Eels aren't hot shit yet. Like that, they as good as they've been under Jason Ryles, and they have been very good. And I know Bulldog Richie had an absolute wank fest of an article saying that the Eels have not been good under Ryles, and you can't believe all the love they're getting. That we've been getting love for good reason. We've shown genuine growth under Jason Ryles. What we did against South Sydney was a stark reminder that we aren't hot shit yet, and that you need to dot your I's, cross your T's, turn up every week, and put in a good shift. Because the moment you don't, you're going to get pantsed by a team that's been battling injuries even worse than you have.
Yeah, and that was what was the most disappointing thing last week, was that we were beaten by a team that had no right to beat us, but gave themselves the right to beat us. We let them take that right.
Maybe that's the template for this week, mate. We are a team that has no right to beat the Roosters as it stands. But you turn up, you play some physical football, you give yourself a chance. You sort of give yourself an invitation at the dining table to go in there and spurn an upset victory. So that's got to be the key for the Eels, being fast, physical, direct. And a lot of the things we're talking about with the NRLW, they are the bare minimum required to challenge a great team in this code. And unfortunately for the Eels, if they'd gotten the Roosters earlier in the year, maybe they wouldn't have been badged a great team, but they're one of the form teams of the competition, and they're looking to consolidate position inside the top 8.
Yeah, the other thing is too, and I don't want to actually speak to them, there's a few rumours floating around about players that won't take the field this week for the Eels, and if that's the case, it'll be a harder task. I mean, we suspected from the start of the week that there might be a change or two to the to how the Eels will line up in this game, but we will take it as them playing 1 to 17 with this. John, I think we've just summed up how the Eels have to play this, which is they have to get into the fight as Ryles wants, far better than what they demonstrated last week. They have to be able to find a way to put the Roosters off their game, because the Roosters have been dictating the play from the opening whistle, literally, in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
we cannot afford to let them get a start. We cannot afford to let them get the territory that will, I guess, expose will give opportunities to the likes of Nwanga. I'm going to have to
Nwanga Nitawaze.
Nwanga Nitawaze, yes. We can't afford for him to have a shot in the air, or even with a half chance on the outside of one of our wingers.
He's posted up against Josh Adokar as well. He's on that right side. So
he's obviously going to have a little bit of a height advantage over the Fox. If he gets that opportunity to get on the outside, he's got that athleticism to take advantage of it. We've seen that the confidence that Sam Walker's been playing with, that he's got that capacity to play what's in front of him. Like he's very much I mean, we've got one of those in our own ranks to an extent with Joash, but Walker's obviously a more seasoned.
He's such a weird guy to try and project too, because I know everyone in the media is losing their minds about the fact he's got 1 million try assists in 6 games since returning from injury. He's been playing. I'm not saying he's not playing great football, but I always have this niggle in the back of my mind about how sustainable the football he plays is when the game starts to tighten up. And I know they just dust up the Bulldogs, and they beat the Dolphins by 60 points the week before. So it's not like they're not beating good teams, but you can do that. You can win 2 or 3 games like that. But as he starts versing the Melbourne Storms and the Bulldogs obviously got beaten by him, but the Canberra Raiders and the New Zealand Warriors, if they were at full strength, the Penrith Panthers too, Let's not forget about them. Can he do it? Can that brand of football sustain the 3+ wins you need? 4 if you're going to be in the lower brackets of the finals, 3 or 4 if you lose in the first week of the finals as an upper seed. I don't know.
John, if the pack does their job, then yes, it goes a long way to it, because you know the potential that he's got in him. If it was a case of say he was struggling with his play, or had some cracks exposed this season. He hasn't had cracks exposed this season. It has happened in the past, but I think that's where those around him haven't performed as well. He's got a pack that's really asserting some dominance, and it seems like he's able to play as a bit of a free spirit there. And that, to me, is where he's at his most dangerous, because, as I said, he really does like to play what's in front of him. And if he's given that license to play that way, then he's a real danger. So, to me, the Eels have to look for a way to put him off his game. He's be playing with so much confidence at the moment. So how do they go about that? Well, obviously they rattle him as much as they can when they do get the opportunity to tackle him. But somehow the Eels have to get the ascendancy through the middle. Because if they allow the Roosters to be on the front foot all through this game, it's going to be ugly. You can't rely on scramble defence against the Roosters, because they've got the players who will take advantage of being on the front foot, of having territorial advantage, or having a team that's constantly tracking backwards. The line speed has to be good this week. I really want to see them. We talk about, Jason Riles talks about the fight. I think it needs to be more than the fight. I think it needs to be really aggressive this week. I don't want to. Do you know what? I don't necessarily want to see pretty football from the Eels this week.
No, I respect that.
They're playing the wrong team to play pretty football, because
look, in general, they don't want to be playing pretty football anyway. Expansive and aggressive, of course, but pretty football, I wouldn't even say it's a luxury you can afford in the NRL when you're beaten up on a cellar dweller. It's not the playing pretty football ingrains trends and habits that you don't want if you're going to be a premiership contender. And there are times to be aggressive, expansive, and shift the ball around and look to go sideways and expose teams, of course. But pretty football should not be in the vocabulary for the Parramatta Eels. And that's why I agree. They've got to be a bit at smash mouth this week. They've got to tote the rock and go north-south and go through the Roosters, both attack and defense. So, I think that if they're going to be competitive this week, that's where it's going to both start and end.
Now, John, for the third time today, I'm going to talk about heart and head. In terms of
bit of that going around today for sure, yeah.
Yeah, because we're at that point in the podcast where it's time for our predictions. The heart says that the Eels can spring an upset, because we have been competitive against the top of the table teams where we have got into the fight. And if we are able to do that, then I see this as being, say, a 22-18 type victory to the Eels. The head then says this could be a real tough ask, and it might be one of those games where we compete until the 60th minute, and then it gets away from us. In which case, I see it as sort of a 30-12 win to the Roosters. So there, I'm hedging my bets there. The first try scorer for the Eels. Look, let's go with Will Penasini with that. And best on field for the Eels, it has to be someone in the pack, but I'll actually go for Riley Smith. I think the conditions and what we want to see from the Eels may well suit him, and so I'll tip him to be best on field for Barra.
Nice. Yeah, look, Roosters deserved favourites going to this one. Not to say the Eels can't spring the upset, so going with the heart in that capacity. I will say first try scorer Jack Williams. I think his footwork before the line on a heavy track could be the key in splitting the defence. And certainly against South Sydney, he had no problems penetrating the front line. Just we couldn't convert those breaks he made into points, which was unfortunate. In terms of the best on field, I'm going to go with the milestone man, Dylan Walker. He's the team will run on how he plays, I think. Whether we play pretty or whether we play direct will be on how he can take control of that middle corridor and sort of get the boys ticking over without getting the ball shifted without losing it as well. So I think that's going to be key. Parramatta, if they're going to upset the Roosters, obviously it's going to be a very narrow affair. I will say, God, they've got so many points in them, so if we can restrict them, it would be huge. How do we restrict them to what total? Parramatta track. I'm just trying to do really shitty footy algebra in my head right now, mate. Parramatta. Let's go for a real Dow one, 14-10.
Okay. And any other predictions there, John?
Oh, I had Dylan Walker best on field and Jack Williams first try scorer.
Okay. So we're gonna find some hope for the Eels to get the victory there, people. And it'll be great to see as many of you out there as possible at CommBank Stadium to get behind the Eels. I know it's tough at this time of year. The team's not going to play finals football, but it's important to get behind them. We also look forward to seeing you there at Paraleagues in Sturlos before the big game. And we always enjoy people coming up and introducing themselves to us as we present our preview there. Thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta, and of course to Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels. Thank you to everyone that's been listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all the sort of stuff that you're normally asked to do with anyone that's putting out content. And John, as I always say, go you mighty Eels.